Isra Hirsi is the executive director and co-founder of the U.S. Youth Climate Strike. She also happens to be the daughter of Democratic Congressmember IIhan Omar. Also in Minneapolis, Juwaria Jama is with the U.S. Climate Strikes and is the co-state lead for the Minnesota Youth Climate Strike. Isra Hirsi, I want to start with you. Talk about what's happening in Minneapolis.
Yeah, so here in Minneapolis, we're actually having the strike start at a park where we're going to be marching to our state capitol in St. Paul, and we're starting at 11:30, and we're going to be having speakers starting at 12:30 with speakers from environmental orgs in the state of Minnesota, as well as students, and then we're expecting to have booths and then escalated action later after the speakers are done.
And Isra, how did you get involved with this whole with the whole movement? How did you become executive director of U.S. Youth Climate Strike as a high school junior?
Yeah, at the time I was actually a high school sophomore, and in late January of this year, I was contacted through Instagram to organize for the climate strike for March 15th because nobody was organizing nationwide. And so from there, I decided to help organize and help co-found this group with two other individuals. And then from there, I ended up being able to become the executive director of this group.
If you could also talk about what activism means. You certainly come from a legendary line of activists. Your mother, of course, is Congressmember IIhan Omar. Did her activism inspire you?
Yeah, at a really young age, my mother and my father took me to protests starting in the first grade. They got me involved with campaigns, and we continued going to protests as a family. Activism has always been a part of my life. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've been entirely inspired. She'd probably say that I've inspired her. But you know, being in a family where activism is really valued has definitely helped shape to where I am today.
Juwaria Jama, you're sitting next to Isra. You two with the U.S. Youth Climate Strikes. You're co-state lead for the Minnesota Youth Climate Strike. Explain how you got involved, why the climate, why sustainability is so important to you.
Yeah, so I recently got involved in environmental activism and the climate justice movement this past year after witnessing the effects of climate change on my own community. I currently live in like a predominantly African-American and low-income community where we are right next to intersecting highways and also pollution by fossil fuel factories in Minneapolis. And a lot of that has affected the health of the people in my community, and it's affected myself and my family directly. And being able to witness these effects have gotten me inspired to get more people involved and to get more people to understand the effects of climate change and how they've disproportionately affected people of color, and how we need to, you know, change the narrative, focus on people of color, and continue building this movement and power.
You are both Somali Americans. Talk about the effect of climate change, of global warming on Somalia.
Yeah, so in the past few years, Somalia has had extreme amounts of droughts. In 2017, they had an extreme severe drought where hundreds of thousands of people were affected and were becoming extremely food insecure. And these droughts happen very constantly in Somalia, and those impacts have impacted both of our communities and our families that live out there, and these are continuously happening because of the climate crisis.
And I would like to add that... Oh.
Go ahead, Juwaria.
I'd like to add that, especially like me being from North Minneapolis, I've seen the effects in both Somalia and also in my community at home. I've seen the way in which air pollution has affected, you know, like my health, but also the ways in which these droughts and food shortages, as Isra mentioned, affect our family back home.
And Juwaria, what do you say to the President of the United States? You were born in Somalia. You came here to the United States as a refugee. You're deeply involved with the climate movement right now. President Trump is a proud climate change denier.
So I was actually born in the United States, but my parents were immigrants from Somalia. And I would say, especially talking about the climate justice movement and climate change, that our president really needs to act for us and act for the people that are being affected. We need presidents and we need lawmakers that are interested in really making change for people that are directly affected and not, doing money laundering and for people in power.
And your message, Isra, to the president, who, as one of the most powerful people on earth, occupying the presidency of the United States, has called climate change a Chinese hoax.
Yeah, so President Trump, your actions are actually harming people. Millions of people across this country are being impacted by the inaction that you're not taking, and us young people are not going to stand down and allow this inaction to continue. We will continue to be on the streets until we see some change from your office, and from there we are going to be voting you out, because we need a leader that is actually going to take action on this incredible crisis.
We're also joined in Washington, D.C. by two more youth climate organizers. Jerome Foster, the